Good morning. Yeah, I want to thank everybody that's listening, that's interested in what happened and what's happening. I want to thank you for watching the videos. I want to um, ask that if you know people that might be interested, that you share the videos, that you um, help me spread the good news, what's possible, what happened, what can happen in your life. Um, this is about spreading the good news that Christ lives in us, and because of that, what seems impossible is possible. Um, I wanted to. I'm leaving Friday night or early Saturday morning for Colombia on a mission trip, so I thought it'd be appropriate to talk about missions and how I got involved initially with taking teams to other countries and doing mission work. And um, so um, how I got involved was actually through my son Mike. I had been in the church quite a while, um, involved with discipleship training and uh, serving in the children's ministry. My wife and I, were involved in the children's ministry for 10 years, uh, doing like Sunday school for the little ones, and we were we had transitioned from being church attenders to being involved in small groups and um, helping out at church. And uh, we raised the kids. You know, we went to church every Sunday, and um, when Mike was in the high school ministry, he signed up to go to Mexico with the teens. And while he was during that process on that trip, he kept a journal, and then he shared the journal with me when he came back, and I was reading it, and it described how initially they were getting ready to leave. They were in the lobby at church, and they were telling him how hot it was going to be. They were going to fly to San Diego, stay in a church in San Diego, and then travel each day across the border into Tijuana, and they were going to build a house for a lady and her two children. And so they were saying how hot it was going to be. So somebody had brought a hair buzzer, a clippers, and he said that he, right there in the lobby, buzzed all of his hair off so that the heat wouldn't be such an issue. And then the other boy did it, and then pretty soon all the boys buzzed their hair, and then one of the girls that was on the trip buzzed her hair, and I was like, man, that's commitment. And I was hooked then to the story. I was like, these guys are for real. And he said it was really difficult. They were sleeping on the floor in a church basement in San Diego, and it was uncomfortable. And then they'd go by bus across the border, and that was a hassle. And it was so hot. And he said it was just really difficult, and he struggled. I could tell as um, each day they were um, difficulties and obstacles, but they kept going, and then he wondered if it was all worth it. And but then the last day, when the house was complete. It was just a shack, like a one room, like what we would think of as a garage almost, a one room simple dwelling. But the lady who they built it for showed up with her kids, and they got off the bus in front of the building, and they saw what they had, what the kids had built for them, and he he said or wrote in the journal that she just fell to her knees and started praising God and crying and holding her kids, knowing that now they had a place to stay. And it was just, oh, I want that in my life. I want to be the guy who struggles and presses in and brings joy to people, because in my past that was when I was doing drugs and drinking too much. It caused a lot of grief and a lot of pain for a lot of people, and um, it just, the thought of doing the opposite was very compelling. Or I just wanted to be doing good, and that seemed like a good way to do it. So I went about trying to find a mission trip to go on, and I went online and tried to sign up, and nothing really was coming together. And then at church, during one of the men's breakfasts on Saturday morning, they said that they were looking for volunteers to go to the Philippines on a medical mission trip. And, I'm not a doctor or a dentist or anything or a nurse. So, I thought that wasn't going to be a fit for me. But um, I, was thinking, nah, but my hand went up and I volunteered to go, and they found a place for me on the evangelism team. So that was my first trip. It was in 2001. We went, there was, I think, 17 or 18 of us, and they were doing cleft palate surgery, and there was an eye doctor and a dentist on the team. And so we sat up there and at it used to be a hotel, and then they turned it into a hospital or a free clinic. And the how they did it was they had the people coming for free medical care, and we put up tents in the front of the hotel, and then so the people would come and they'd have to go through the evangelism tent in order to get in line to get the services. So we gave our testimonies and shared the gospel with them. And so, my testimony of being delivered from alcoholism and drugs, um, and I'll share that with you in another video soon. But it's very compelling and powerful. And so, I was scared to get up in front of people, and I had a fear of failure, but I did it anyway. And God, He, it was weird because the first time I got up, it was almost like I was watching me do it. Like I had almost an out of body experience where I just told the story of what happened to me, and how I went from I didn't believe in God to now I believe in God, and He saved me from myself. And so then the next time I had to do it, I just remembered what I said the first time. So it was like the Holy Spirit had empowered me to make it all make sense and do it in orderly fashion. And it was a powerful moment. And but then the next time I just remembered what I said the first time and said it again, and ended up giving my testimony like 20 times or something. And so, I mean, a lot of other things happened on that trip, and we met some awesome people, and I even met uh, Pastor Elmer, who I'm friends with now. He found me 15 years after that trip. I got a Facebook message asking if I was the Dave Schnabel that was in the Philippines in 2001, and could we connect again? And I mean, now I've been there a couple more times as a more mature believer, and walking in the power and the gifts, and um, so things have changed drastically. Once you start, things change, and you grow and mature in the faith, and God starts using you in different ways, and that's what happened. But so then we came back from that trip, and I was I was leading a men's Bible study group. They call it Top Gun in at church, and I asked the guys if I put together a trip, because I was leading these men and I'd been on a trip, so I knew what that was like, and I thought we could put the two together and go do something. And I had friends. We were doing work in the inner city at the time, and I had made friends with Pastor Jose from Central Brook Church. And so I got a group of guys who were willing to go, but we had no place to go. So I was looking for an opportunity that we could serve somewhere. So I called Pastor Jose up and said, I have a team ready to go. Do you have something for us maybe in Mexico? And suddenly there was a commotion on the phone. He had actually fell off of his chair and dropped the phone. And then when he collected himself, he got back on the phone, and he told me what happened, that he had just come back from Guatemala, and he had visited a pastor friend there, and they had taken him to a site that was on the edge of town. There was a group of people that were meeting in a home, and they wanted to build a church for them, but they didn't have any resources, or the men were away in the fields every day working at another location, so they weren't even in that town. It was just the ladies and the children, and he wanted to help them. So he said, I'll put together a team, and I'll come and we'll help you build the church. And he said, I came back home, and he said, I didn't have a team. I had promised them to bring a team, but I didn't have one. And I was praying to God, Lord, help me fulfill this promise I made to them in Guatemala. And he said, while I'm praying to God, you called me and said, I have a team. He said it was just blew him away. He fell off the chair, shock and awe. The God is good. And I liked thinking that God would use me to answer prayer. I was just simply, the desires of my heart were to help. I had the resources and the wherewithal, the the desire to do it, and I could do it, and I put my mind to do it. And then it was like perfect storm where the two came together, and God used it. And I really was humbled and grateful and give God glory for using me in that way to answer prayer. And it's happened a few times like that where people pray and then all of a sudden God tells me to talk to them, and it's just cool to be the guy, you know, that God uses in such a specific way, a tangible way, a way that's not, where it could be coincidence, but you just know it's not, it's so he said to that he wanted us to go to Guatemala, and so we started preparing, finding out what vaccinations we needed and visa requirements, and we started preparing. And then he called me and said that they had a bus that someone had donated to their church, and he wanted to donate it to that church in Guatemala. So could we drive it down from Milwaukee to Guatemala City? And the thought of that, just because I'm a driver, I drive for a living, and like that excited me. And so he introduced me to a Guatemalan that was living in Milwaukee at the time. His name was Mario, and him and I drove the bus down, and we were trying to beat the clock because the it was at Christmas time. We left December 26th, and we were trying to get to the Guatemalan border before January 1st because the bus was 10 years old, and if you import a vehicle that's older than 10 years, they charge you 100% tax, whatever the blue book value of the bus is, to import it. So it turned out we had to do that because we did get down there by the first, but the bus had been put into service before, the in November of the year before, and that's what they go by. So we ended up having to pay $4,000 to give them a free bus. But that's kind of beside the point. But so on this trip, we're driving down, and once we crossed the border into Mexico, we only drove during the day because of the danger of being hijacked or robbed. And so we'd find a hotel with a secure parking. And so um, many things happened on that trip, but the thing that was instrumental in my life was I met Pastor Roberto, who operates in the healing gifts, and I believe he's the one that prayed for me to receive it. Um, so what happened was we were driving along, and the bus started making noises. Like when you hit a bump, it would look, every speed bump, every pothole, it was like. So we were like, we have to pull over and see what's wrong. But the road was narrow, there was weeds on both sides and rocks, and the traffic, was no safe place to just stop in the middle of the lane and check it out. So we waited for a place to pull over off of the road so we could look at it. So we're going along, and when we finally get to a place, we pull over, we get out, I look underneath, and there's a big chunk of the steering, I don't know what it was, like a tie rod or something, and had broken, and it was hanging down, and when we hit a bump, it would hit the ground, and that was the noise that we were hearing. So Mario said that we were in luck because the building we had stopped in front of was a repair shop. I look over, and here's some big black truck tires leaning against the building, and there was a red rubber air hose, um, and there was music playing. I didn't know what kind of music, but he said it's Christian music. I can, it was praise music in Spanish. So he said, I think we're in luck. So we walked over there, talked to the man that he was working on a car. He was changing the tire, and we told him what the trouble was. And he said, well, when I finish here, then I'll look at it and see if I can help you. And so we did that. We pulled over, and he climbed under there, and he ended up jacking the piece into place and welding a chain around it to hold in place. And that held for the rest of the trip. But while he was doing that, he was telling us his testimony. He said, I was a bad man. I was a highwayman, a robber, and me and my two friends, one night we had set up an ambush out on the highway, and this lady pulled up, and we robbed her, and the two guys I was with, they were drunk, and they got violent, and they hurt the lady. And so then she reported it, and the police did investigation, and they found out, from the description who it was. So they arrested the three of them because they were kind of like partners, in crime. They were known to hang together, and so they arrested them. And so he's in the jail. He's just telling us a story, and his mom came and pleaded with him, please, 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 come to the Lord, come to Jesus, repent of this behavior, stop robbing people, you're going to end up dead, please, please, please. So he gave in to his mom's pleading and prayed and gave his life to the Lord, and she left. And then another guy came to the cell. He said he was like the leader of the jail bad guy group or whatever, mafia, I don't know. So he said, I heard about you, your ways, and I think you'll fit perfectly in our group here in the jail, and we want you to join our gang. He says, I told him, no, I can't join your gang. I just joined a different gang. And the guy told him that, well, that's too bad for you, because tonight you're going to die. We're going to come when the lights go out. Your lights are going out. You're going to die. And so he prepared to meet his maker. He said he had peace that he was going to be taken care of if the worst happened. And so then, just before the lights went out, he was taken from his cell into a room, and it was a lineup. His other buddies were there, some other strangers. They lined him up against the wall, and the woman that had been robbed, she was standing there. And she picked out his two friends, and then she said, no, the other one isn't here. And the police knew these three guys always went together, so they had him stand forward, look really closely at this guy, make sure, because we think that's him. But she said, no, that's not him. So they actually let him go because she wouldn't identify him. So he said, I left there. He felt like he had escaped death, and he said he was so thankful that he ran. He says, I ran all the way here to this church, and I've been serving the church here faithfully ever since. And I was thinking, this is like a repair shop. This isn't a church. And he said, no, there's a church in the back. And actually it was down and back. So I said, well, is the pastor here? And he said, yeah, he lives here. So he finished working on the bus, and then we went down these stairs into the, now we're in the living room, or not the living room, in the dining room of the pastor's part of the house. And the pastor was eating. He had his back towards the stairs where we came down. And the guy introduced us. He said, Pastor, these men are missionaries and they want to meet you. So he turns around and he looks at me and he says, What took you so long? And I'm like, What do you mean? He said, I prayed to God for help. And he said, Help is on the way. What took you so long? I was shocked. I was like, he prayed to God and God sent us and he knew we were coming, but he wondered what took so long. And there was a conviction in my heart that God had sent us to help him. So it was like somehow I just knew what to do. And so we had a bus was full of donations. We had duffel bags full of clothing. We had Bibles that were donated by the Gideons, like cases of New Testament scriptures. We had 2,000 Bible tracts. We had uh, cooking, pots and pans and so much stuff. And what I determined was we were going to give him half of everything that we were going to give to the Guatemalan church. We gave to him in Mexico. So we split everything 50-50. Even the cash, I had $4,000 to give to the church in Guatemala, and I gave him 2,000 of it. Just the conviction was in my heart to do it, and that's what we did. And then we left. We finished the trip down there, and I'll tell you more about that in another video. But we ended up going back there with a team like 3 or 4 times. We'd fly into Guatemala because it was right near the border of Mexico and Guatemala. And so we'd go visit our friends in Guatemala and then drive up to Mexico and do work with Pastor Roberto. And so on one of the trips, I had brought a translator, a kid. He was just a high school kid with 3 years of Spanish. He was supposed to translate for us, but his high school Spanish and Chiapas Spanish is not the same. So he had a lot of difficulty, but we managed. And but what happened was he got sick. The kid did, and he started crying and puking. And so Pastor Roberto, who had the gift of healing that I didn't know about up until this time, he said, "Well, let me pray for him. I can help him." And he laid hands on him, and he immediately recovered. He stopped crying, he stopped puking, and everything was fine. And I saw that, and I was like, I had been struggling with a besetting sin, begging God to deliver me from it, you know, and I thought maybe this guy can pray for me and I can get free from this. And so he laid hands on me and he started yelling at the devil. And, my Spanish is very weak, but, Diablos, blah, 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 and when he was praying for me, there was so much like energy and light and heat, and it just like I went into another realm for a few minutes, and he was just very loud, so it was like Spanish. um, I didn't know what was happening. I was like, this, it was happening to me, and and then it was over, and that besetting sin I was hoping to get rid of, it didn't go away. But so it felt like nothing happened. But it was 10 years later when that energy that I felt when he was praying for me started manifesting. And if you've watched the other videos, you'll remember that it was like electricity flowing through my body. And I believe he prayed that I would receive the gift he had for healing the sick, but I wasn't ready for it. But God had, his perfect timing when I was at my lowest, but had turned towards God with my heart. Then he gave it to me because I felt I didn't deserve it. If he'd have gave me this gift when I was doing good and everything was fine, I would have thought I earned it or I deserved it, or of course he's going to give this to me. Look at how good I'm doing. And that's not God's way. It's a grace gift. It's a undeserved, um, unmerited. And so I get it. It was when I was sucking up the place with my not doing it right, but my heart was for God. Then the power came. Then the manifestation of the gifts started happening, and God gets all the credit because I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. And his timing is perfect, and he knows what he's doing. He, when when the time was right, then God answered Roberto's prayer and declaration over my life. And so after that, after it started manifesting, I realized what had happened, and I determined to go back there and thank him because my life was forever altered. And we actually did go back, and I'll tell you more about that in another video. Um, Going back there, and because I had taken teams back there multiple times, but then there was a big gap, like 8 years or something. So when I went back to thank him, he looked at me and said, "I thought you were dead," because I hadn't come back. But that's for another story or another day. So thanks for listening. I love you and look forward to sharing more with you in the future. So share the video if you think someone's interested. I'm going to keep producing them, keep um, sharing the stories to get them out there. God is good. He knows what he's doing. His timing is perfect. And I just pray a blessing over you right now, that you get that you can trust God with the timing, with your life, with your, just keep walking towards him humbly, and you're not earning it. You don't deserve it. He is a good father, and he knows what he's doing. You can trust him. Believe me.